This has been my most requested video since starting this series, so for the surprising amount of Mordekaiser mains in my comments section, this one's for you. Mordekaiser is potentially one of the most volatile champions in League of Legends. One moment you might be dominating lane against him, and the next he's suddenly just able to beat you, and you'll never be able to tell exactly when he's stronger than you, because Mordekaiser is one of the few champions in the game that scales better off of levels than he does with actual damage. All 5 of Mordekaiser's abilities scale off of either his or the enemy player's level, which means once he hits late game, there's not a lot of things outside of a hard counter that can really take him down. Now, I know I said this one is for the Mordekaiser mains in my comments, but this is also a hit piece on all of you, because Mordekaiser mains are the same type of people that come over to your house for a party, demand everyone play Smash with them, then sets the rules to Final Destination only, 1v1 only, and no items. And if you don't play that way, they'll be the first to point out who has the most stocks when doing a free-for-all. Mordekaiser mains are also the type of people to call you bad if you're not playing a big, buff, burly man in the top lane, which I think says more about them than the people they're facing, but I won't say what because I'm not trying to get cancelled before I even reach 1,000 subscribers. However, for as much hate as I'm giving Mordekaiser mains, I have to admit that not only is your champion incredibly fun to play, but I know that we're all truly men of culture. This is a safe place to admit that, like myself, Mordekaiser mains spend all of their free time watching VTubers, and it is the correct thing to do. Every day, I pray that Lord Nuxanor himself takes me. But alas, I am not a VTuber. This is so sad. Can we get 500 likes? What was I talking about again? League of Legends, right. To be honest, this video is a lot like Mordekaiser, where you can kind of just do whatever you want with it and it'll eventually work. Full AP works, full tank works, AP bruiser works, hell, you could probably do full attack speed crit and still make it work on this champ with how well he can scale into the late game. Just like how I'm going to make this video scale up the YouTube algorithm by doing jokes about VTubers and, well, VTubers, but I'm gonna make it work. Because while this champion is incredibly Chad like the Mantheon before him, for reasons that you'll see once we get into the lore section, and oh boy, you're gonna see what I mean, but also for reasons of him being the only champion that can figuratively and literally send you to Brazil, where all Chads are from. This is a true fact, look it up. So it's time to be toxic to the wholesome people and wholesome to the toxic people as I explain the volatility of this champion and the honest truth about Mordekaiser, the Iron Revenant. Mordekaiser, like a lot of champions in League of Legends apparently, was not always known as Mordekaiser. A long time ago, maybe not that long, but still pretty long ago, the fiercest warlord the world has ever seen, San Uzal, rampaged across the northern lands that make up modern-day Noxus. He was essentially Runeterra's version of Genghis Khan, but unlike the Big K-Man, he believed in an afterlife that somewhat resembled the Norse Valhalla, the Hall of Bones where he would earn a seat amongst the gods for all eternity for his conquering. However, when San Uzal died, he was only met by nothing but fog and ashen ground, lost souls wandering aimlessly towards their own personal oblivions as they all discordantly whispered. Outraged by the idea that he had wasted his whole life in hopes of some fantasy, San Uzal used that sheer anger in order to refuse fading into the realm of death like so many other spirits that he saw. Over time, the dissonant whispers of the realm began to fuse into words that he could understand, and this is how he slowly learned Aknun, the language of the dead, which allowed him to speak into the living world and tempt those who would dare listen into his service with the promise of indomitable strength. Much like VTubers tempt you into subbing to them with those gigantic motherly milkers. And just like VTubers, San Uzal was able to make people believe in the titties, I mean the promise of strength, and convince the coven of sorcerers to resurrect him from the dead and bind his spirit into a hulking iron body in the likeness of his old armor. However, as is the case with every single time people resurrect a dead person or god in hopes of gaining power and thinking they can control it, they couldn't. And San Uzal simply slew all of the helpless sorcerers where they stood, and in desperation they tried to bind him with his name like he's a demon from The Conjuring, but he pulled out an Uno reverse card because San Uzal was no longer technically correct. His true name is Mordekaiser, which is just his name spoken in Aknun. It also means I can stop typing out his stupid hyphenated name in this Google Doc. From the fleeting souls of the sorcerers, Mordekaiser made a Nightfall, the big ol' bonkin' mace that he carries around, and seized control of the armies they controlled, bringing forth a new relentless campaign of slaughter that made entire generations of the living disappear. Also, he can call Nightfall to him like he's Thor, so I mean that's kinda cool. During this latest campaign, Mordekaiser raised up the Immortal Bastion, one of, if not the largest man-made structure in Runeterra, and the centerpiece of his empire that houses current-day Noxus' capital. And while it does just look like an absolutely sick throne of power, it actually held a deeper purpose in controlling the Realms of Death. Eventually, Mordekaiser was defeated by the Noxi tribes and a betrayal from within his inner circle. The official biography doesn't say who the mystery betrayal was from, but the wiki says it was LeBlanc, so that's where we're going with. LeBlanc, of course, then uses her own influence to have Rel, a champion you've probably never heard of, trained to defeat Mordekaiser when he returns once more. However, Mordekaiser, being not just a ruthless barbarian, but a masterful tactician as well, planned for his death. Mordekaiser returned to a portion of the Death Realm now known as Mitna Rakhtun, a place under his control where the souls of all those he and his army had slain go, unable to fade like the spirits that he had seen upon his first death. Those who were worthy enough to be slain by his own hand became his generals, each of them completely bound to his will and serving in his infinite and immortal army of souls. At the heart of this realm controlled by Mordekaiser stands the Immortal Bastion, its true purpose to bind Mitna Rakhtun to the mortal world. Now, Mordekaiser and his army lay in wait for the next birth of his soul into the mortal world. Okay, this guy literally sends people to Brazil both in and out of game, but luckily in-game it isn't permanent. However, you will feel the torment of your teammates calling you bad. This lore sets up Mordekaiser to be one of the big bads in League of Legends, along with Viego, the primordial demons like Fiddlesticks, and the Watchers / Belveth / the Void. However, where Mordekaiser differs from the rest of them isn't just in his overall power, but in the fact that he doesn't seem to have a proper way to die anymore. While it isn't confirmed that any of the other ones I listed can truly die either, Mordekaiser's inability to remain dead is the true threat behind his build-up as a big bad, and he's never something that you can just forget about permanently. Because whenever he dies, he just needs to sit down and watch VTubers for a few years before his woman-hating bar recharges and he can go on a rampage again. It is a bit Saturday morning cartoony in the "I am the Dark Lord of evil and death and bad things and evil." But there's a reason why that character archetype works, and I think Mordekaiser does it quite well with him having an actual reason for being like this, unlike many other characters that share the same archetype that are just evil because we need a bad guy for the story. Mordekaiser's passive is Darkness Rise, and oh my god, I'm loving this champ already. All of his abilities are so short compared to the last two I've done. Mordekaiser gains a stack whenever any of his abilities or auto attacks hit an enemy champion or jungle monster. At 3 stacks, he makes this danger zone around him that deals a bit of base damage plus percentage max health damage and grants him increased movement speed. The duration gets refreshed every time he autos or hits an ability on a champion or monster. This ability is what allows Mordekaiser to not only build into tank items without taking a big penalty due to the percentage max health damage, but it's also what allows him to be amazing in extended trades because the damage procs so often that even when his abilities are all on cooldown, you won't even notice a decrease in damage. The damage and movement speed also scale with level, so his ability gets turned from getting shredded by razors into getting shredded by razors. He also passively gets extra magic damage on basic attacks, so good for him. Mordekaiser's Q is Obliterate. Oh, this is going to be tough not cringing through these names. Mordekaiser winds up his mace, swinging it in a target direction and doing damage to all enemies in the area. If there's only one enemy hit by his ability, Mordekaiser bonks them all the way to horny jail by doing up to 60% increased damage. This part of the ability will be important for his ult, so I'll wait getting into that later. This ability is Mordekaiser's main damage source, especially with how low the cooldown gets to late game and the fact that like everything else in his kit, the ability scales with Mordekaiser's level, so even if he can't build any AP, he's still getting more damage on this ability by just leveling it up and getting more levels post 9. You can also flash during the windup of this ability, allowing you to reposition the damage and giving the enemy almost no time to react properly. So, have fun playing whack-a-mole for around 90% of the game, except instead of getting a giant stuffed bear for your girlfriend as a prize, you get that much more precious 13 LP. Mordekaiser's W is Indestructible. Like my love for Lord Nuxanor. Mordekaiser stores a percentage of the damage he deals and takes as a potential shield in the secondary resource bar, which decays if he hasn't dealt or taken damage in a few seconds. The bar goes up to 30% of his max health and can't decay lower than 5% of his max health. It will also be set to 5% when it comes off cooldown if it wasn't already higher. Actively, Mordekaiser gains the shield that he stored for the next few seconds and can recast the ability while the shield is up to heal for a percentage of the remaining shield. This is Mordekaiser's main sustain and defensive option throughout the game, and the shield is able to be stacked up on both jungle monsters and minions, meaning even if you can't hit your enemy laner, you'll still be able to stack it up and get a big shield on your next engage. It's also one of those abilities that has a deceptively low cooldown for how powerful it can be, meaning you can just use it to slowly heal yourself up if your lane opponent isn't trying to fight and you know the enemy jungler isn't going to try and gank you. So as a quick recap for that ability, Mordekaiser is bringing a shield that has a medkit strapped to the back, but they're both ghosts. Mordekaiser's E is Death's Grasp. They really went all in on those names, huh? Passively, Mordekaiser gains bonus percentage magic penetration based on this ability's rank. Actively, Mordekaiser sends out a hand in a target direction to grab a bitch, dealing damage and pulling all units hit by his ability closer to him. This ability is quite simple, but it's best paired with Mordekaiser's Q in order to do what I call the grab and bonk, since if someone is hit with your E, then you're all but guaranteed to hit a Q on them and potentially get that bonus damage if they're alone. This combo is what you'll be using on Mordekaiser for the remaining 10% of the game that you're not just doing whack-a-mole, since if you hit it, then you just need to auto the enemy once and your passive is procced, and most champions won't be able to or won't want to fight back at that point as they've already lost a substantial amount of health. It can also be used when you're running away to send someone away from you. Mordekaiser's ultimate is Realm of Death. You're going to Brazil! Mordekaiser targets an enemy champion and after a small cast time sends them both into a death realm for the next 7 seconds. Neither champion can leave the area denoted by the death realm, except for when they bug out of it, and while inside the death realm, Mordekaiser steals 10% of the enemy's max health, AD, AP, attack speed, armor, and MR, and heals himself for the amount of health stolen! During the time that you're in the death realm, neither champion can interact with anything outside of it, and nothing outside of it can interact with either champion. However, other champions will show up as different glowing lights depending on if they're ally or enemy. This is Mordekaiser's highest scaling ability, because every champion in the game scales off of all of the stats that he steals outside of AP simply by leveling up, and with the addition of the durability update, he's now stealing more tank stats than ever before. Meaning that the later the game goes, the more this ability hyperscales in effectiveness due to the fact that if Mordekaiser kills someone in the death realm, he gains the stolen stats until they respawn. Meaning that even in mid-game when respawn timers are around 30 seconds, that's 30 seconds of him being better than most other people on the map. The fact that his ability forces a 1v1 where the enemy can't leave is absolutely crucial for Mordekaiser, because now he can always get the full damage off for his Q, he can't get kited for eternity due to the limited space, and due to the fact that he's stealing stats, your power level is diminished while his goes up, so even if he was behind, he can equal out the power difference for a small amount of time. It also allows him to stop the enemy jungler from smiting things like Drake. Not to mention that this champion is amazing in 1v1s, so just like Alawi, he's able to 1v2 if the jungler comes up post 6, but not because he'll just burst both players down with an unfair amount of tentacles, but because he can make 2 separate 1v1s where he's significantly stronger unless the enemy top or jungler is incredibly fed. For as amazing of an ability as this is for Mordekaiser, it has one fatal flaw. The cast counts as crowd control, and the effect can be cleansed. Which means that everything that makes a champion unstoppable will prevent it altogether while putting the ability on cooldown, while cleansing effects like an orange or QSS will take you out of the death realm once you're inside of it. Imagine the pain this man who has spent thousands of years plotting his domination must feel when he personally brings you into his death realm to claim your soul for his army and then sees you pull out a ribbon and you're suddenly no longer there. Now, is Mordekaiser good? Yes, but actually no. He's really strong in the right situations, but the problem that I faced a lot while playing as him is that he struggles a lot in lane without any sort of jungle presence from his side, meaning most of the time I was forced to grab a full tank item, usually Randuin's since most matchups are AD, as my first item instead of being able to go for a standard AP Bruiser build with Riftmaker as my first item. He also struggles with the same thing that most Juggernauts struggle with, is that he's getting kited, meaning ranged matchups are so oppressive unless you can somehow miraculously land your E. Especially once you get to late game, Mordekaiser is insanely strong and can do some incredible damage when he gets there, but he's not going to be the team's primary carry due to him being easily susceptible to kiting and being countered in his best ability by a 1300 gold item. It also doesn't help that even with his insane scaling to him, other champs will still be able to play around him late game if they have the right tools. Overall, he's still incredibly fun to play, if not a little clunky feeling at times, and still brings a lot to his team if they're willing to accept that he's there to scale and make people pay attention to him rather than be the true carry for a team. He's also simple enough that you have time to watch your favorite stream on your second monitor. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is TheTarians. I hope you enjoyed the honest truth about Mordekaiser. If you did, go leave a comment down below telling me who you think I should be doing honest truth about next. And while you're down there, go hit the subscribe button and notification bell to be updated when any new honest truths come out. Also, hello. I'm using a new microphone. I don't know how long it's going to last. I'm going to have this equipment, but I have it. And hopefully, it'll be here for the next one. So I will see you then. Bye-bye.